last little ding. All right, welcome to First Universalist Church of New Madison. Like summer day. We don't have air conditioning, so usually it's sweltering in here, but it's nice today with the fans running, so everybody is welcome. Do we have any announcements?
Yes.
Yes.
We were just talking about that. Maybe I should come up that way.
Yes.
Those who are not here can see. I'm Derek Parker. For those who don't know, I'm the minister down at the El Dorado Church, and sometimes they let me off the leash to come up here and preach. In September, it's featured in the Herald magazine, the Universalist Church in El Dorado, Ohio will be hosting Universalist Convocation. This is a once-a-year event for people who want to further explore Universalist theology, spiritual. We are the host. We have not combining with ours for. It'll probably be about 40 to 50 guests from across the country. The theme is a principled faith, and our keynote speaker is from the Methodist Theological School of Ohio over in Delaware, just north of Columbus. It's the Reverend Dr. Susan Ritchie. Susan Ritchie has been the minister to the North Unitarian Universalist congregation in Lewis Center, Ohio since 1995. She is also director of the Unitarian Universalist House of Studies at the Methodist Theological School in Ohio. She is the author of 2 books, Children of the Same God, Unitarianism in Historic Relation to Judaism and Islam, as well as author of Dark and Stormy Unitarian Theology and Gothic and Ghostly Literature. Convocation will meet from Friday through Sunday. If you have any questions, you can ask me. There's online registration because there's a lunch that's served on Saturday, and we need an accurate count to know how many people to buy lunch for and whether you need vegetarian. But it's a big event and it's coming our way.
And as part of the Saturday activities, we've opened this church for people who want a tour. So at 4 o'clock, this church, New Madison Church, will be open, and anybody will be welcome to come.
I think they moved it a little up in time to 4:45 or something because they needed to fit in a business meeting.
It'll be open, so.
Yeah, but they wanted to come and be able to tour and see both the building and the cemetery next door.
Okay. So, Kenny, are you going to be available Saturday?
Could be.
We need somebody that knows the history of the church. Would be nice.
I know a little. Between me and others, we could probably fit it
Well,
together.
I think some of the important things are the things that are handmade, you know, the sconce, the lectern, all these things that were made by people who were members of the church. I think it'd be nice to let people know that there is a personal connection, that this church has been here for over 100 years, and it's got a lot of life left in it.
I think 165.
Oh, speaking of life left in it and how long it's been here, I got a letter from Mike Sell to demolition, $46,000 to demolish the church.
That's all. Just 46.
$46,000. And he didn't go into whether we get the sale of the used bricks or whether he's taking that out of his thing. So hopefully it will not come to that. Hopefully if we decide to close or have to close, we can sell the building. And somebody will buy it and use it for an art gallery or coffee house or something. So, any other announcements? We have a visit.
I think we had also an opportunity to attend an El Dorado service. Was that in October?
Oh, yes.
October 13.
Yes. So let me come back up. This gets way out in time, but in October, I think it's the 13th. I'm not good at projecting the, but El Dorado's former pastor, Donnie Hayden, is going to be coming up from Cincinnati. She has recently had a book published by a national publisher, and so she'll be coming up. Her sermon will be related to her book, and she'll have some discounted copies and can do a book signing. And we thought, well, a national author in our midst, former minister at the El Dorado Church. She is semi-retired at this point, but she loves to come up and preach when she can, and a few of you might remember Donnie Hayden. She was at El Dorado after my first stint there, but before Kathy Brawley.
So busy times coming up.
Yes.
Keep your calendars. And speaking of busy times, tomorrow, well, I don't know, maybe today, the fair. I think tomorrow is the first day for the Dark County Fair.
Usually on
Friday.
Friday.
Yes, I gotta straighten my calendar out because the Democratic tent will be right by the Coliseum where it usually is. I'll be there every day from noon to 1. So anybody who is interested, drop by and say hi. Actually, I've gotten in connection now with the Farmer Labor Party. Is anybody familiar with that? There's a Farmer Labor Party in Darke County. Ted Finnern he's a lawyer in town, is the head of that. Their booth is up above inside the Coliseum, but basically right above on the same side as the Democratic booth. And he kind of twisted my arm to do some volunteer time there too. So, and it's basically the same principles. Democratic Farmer, if you remember Minnesota, the Democratic Party was a farmer party. It was a labor party in Minnesota until the change happened. So that's starting to move a little bit here in Darke County. So we'll see what happens with that. All right. Any other announcements? Been pretty busy this morning. Okay. Our welcome is 429 in your hymnal.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
429 is our welcome. It's not a hymn. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. William Schultz. Our prelude, Now Thank We All Our God.
If you want to follow along, it's on page 32 in the song.
In the hymnal, it's page 32.
I'm playing Now Thank You All.
And as every Sunday, we thank God for the blessings of music and our musicians. Two things I forgot to mention. Derek is here and he's speaking on the kind of rule changes or the principles changes that are going on the question of reason in the Unitarian Universalist Church. He mentioned that the title of his sermon comes from Francisco Goya, who was a Spanish painter. I like art and I like Goya, so you're going to get everything is going to be Goya. And this is one of Goya's most famous paintings. the massacre of Spanish villagers by the French during one of the multiple wars that happened there. And we'll have a little bit more on Goya as we go through. The other thing I forgot to mention is our sidewalks are poured. If you notice, they look real nice. The only question I have is, if you remember, the sidewalk from the road up to the stairs used to be a straight level slope. He poured it with a step, like a 3.5-inch step.
Just like it always has been.
It's been a step there always?
Yep.
We need to paint on that. I'll go ahead and do that. That's or if you're walking down the sidewalk and step off to the edge. I never noticed that, so what do you know? All right, chalice lighting. Who we are called to be. Our chalice is a reminder that in hard times, our ancestors in faith acted with courage to bring hope and safety, to bring life itself to threatened people. We light it today as a reminder of who we are called to be in a world still dangerous and despairing. With courage and faith, we bring ourselves to the work before us. Our opening hymn is 345, With Joy We Claim the Growing Light. Sing church. It's not always this nice on Sunday. All right, our affirmation, and as usual, all this comes out of the UU website that provides material for anybody who wants to pay attention or learn what is going on with UUs. We pray for our country's leaders. May they lead with justice and fairness on their lips. May they hold in the highest esteem the value of human life and liberty. May they never forget those who elected them, nor those who did not. Many of us are worried, anxious, afraid. Who will uphold our basic human rights? Who will protect us from rollbacks on liberties? Who will lead us through the shadows? Who will remember us? Spirit of life and love, holy presence all around. Embrace us with your wisdom and peace. Surround us with reassurance. Fill our hearts with purpose. Empower us to do what is right. May our hearts be expanded as the time comes for us to comfort each other. May our minds be charged with creativity as we find our way forward. May our bodies remain well so we can travel to our state capitals, or the line at the abortion clinic to escort someone to safety. May our spirits be guided by our values. May our lives speak, be they gentle and angry or loud and clear. May we remain united in our mission as a people of faith to connect deeply, grow together, and serve one another. Blessed be. May it be so. Amen. And your next bit of Goya, if it plays, we had some trouble this morning, as you'll see.
Transmission hurts feelings.
and Senator Sherrod is doing something about it. He wrote a bill to crack down on these sneaking, less violent, intervention and charging. Tell Sherrod, keep fighting to tax Ohio.
Unitarian Universalists originated in Protestant Christianity, but today most deny many of the basic Protestant Christian beliefs, and they don't even consider themselves.
We're getting two at the same time, so it played the first time I did it.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus.
Let's go past it.
Shrinkflation hurts families, and Senator Shrinkflation hurts families.
This is your brain.
No, so we're not going to do that. All right, that's basically, it's an outline of the Goya painting, the history behind it, and the reason for the explanation of what it means. It's pretty involved and pretty interesting, but Derek will refer to it as we go through there. So, joys and concerns. We still have our sunflowers for Ukraine. Amazingly enough, I don't know how many of you following the news, Ukraine has actually advanced into Russian territory, which is pretty surprising, and actually surprised the Russians quite a bit too. They've taken Russian prisoners, they've taken Russian territory, so we'll see what happens. Partially, this is a result of renewed American and European support. Material and supplies have been held up by our conservative Congress. They've been released, and the Ukrainians now have the material and the support to go forward with their defense of their liberty. We'll see how that happens, but we remain with the Ukrainians in their struggle with the Russians. We'll also light a candle for Israel and Palestine. It seems every week, almost every day, the Israelis find another nest of Hamas leaders, and every single time they're in a school, a mosque, a hospital, a school, a mosque, and a hospital or a hospital is hit with what the Israelis call targeted munitions, and what the pictures show are giant cluster-type destruction bombs. The last one was a school with a mosque attached. 90 individuals were killed. This was a report by Hamas, which we don't know exactly how reputable that is. But the pictures showed the bodies in the building, and it showed the destruction of the building. That part cannot be propaganda. That part is real. All we can do is keep the people of Palestine and the people of Israel, both have suffered at the hands of each other, and keep them in our prayers and hope for some kind of proposal, some kind of advancement of peace as opposed to war, which it seems both sides want. Right. Anything else?
Quite a candle for, I heard on this morning TV, Sunday morning show, the centenary for the birth of James Baldwin. And you think about an author who has impacted our lives, daily lives, changed the course of history in some respects, what a literary man he was. So it's like a candle in honor of James Baldwin.
Candle for James Baldwin, and I did hear a reference to that. With everything he was through in his life, all the trials and tribulations, all the aspersions that were cast on him, he remained a gentle, forgiving, supportive, loving person. Even when he was exiled to France, he did not harbor hate. He did not try to take down or destroy the United States. He still supported what America stands for, which takes an indomitable spirit. In the case of James Baldwin, a small body, but pretty incredible person. Right. Anything else? All right. We'll light. I had my hip replaced 3 weeks ago, had it replaced. The other hip I had replaced 2 years ago. I think I told you this. I was up and walking around and clicking my heels 4 days later after that one, 3 weeks. I still can't hardly walk on this without a cane. So I see my doctor Tuesday. We'll see what the heck is going on with that. Whether he'll answer to that or whether 2 years older makes me in worse shape. So I'm lighting a candle for my hip. Hopefully it'll improve a little bit. All right, one final candle for those thoughts, those cares, those worries, those concerns that can't be voiced, or maybe that you're not aware of yet. We are with you as a church community. We want to form and keep our church community. And if you need us, please take part. All right, our message, the sleep of reason produces monsters. This is the actual Goya painting that refers to. The little children's story kind of explained that. These are the monsters that appear when reason goes to sleep.
As always, my gratitude to the El Dorado congregation for giving me the freedom to come up here and be in ministry with you from time to time. Unfortunately, because of my work schedule in September, I will not be here in September. And the same will also end up being true in October, because in October, my husband and I will be taking a vacation. We have not had one together for quite some time. So I love being here, and I'll be missing you, those two. Writing to the 19th century Universalist theologian Hosea Ballou. If we agree, there we go. So, for those who don't know my history, I first stepped inside a Unitarian Universalist church in 1992. When I was a very new student at the University of Chicago. The stately, stone, high-steepled First Unitarian Church of Chicago was all of one block away from my dorm. I could fall out of bed on Sunday morning, stumble down the street, and still easily make it for worship. But it wasn't the convenience that brought me there and kept me coming back. It was something far deeper than the convenience. I was back then a student in the Department of Geophysics. A little bit of geology, a little bit of physics. I call it dirt moving around, basically. And a number of my professors were members of the First Unitarian Church of Chicago. It was a place friendly to the cooperation between religion and science, and so different from my childhood church in a different denomination. And much of that had to do with the way that Unitarian churches appreciated the role that reason could play in religion. And so later in life, I would encounter a denominational family, and so it is with a certain amount of dismay for me that when our denomination this past summer changed their language around shared values, that there was no mention in the new statement about the role of reason in religion. Now, the old statement of principles spoke about the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the guidance of reason in protecting us from what are termed idolatries of the mind and spirit. But the new statement of shared values has no direct or even indirect references to reason. The El Dorado congregation was a signatory to a petition to add reason into the statement of values. But that petition was voted down by this past year's General Assembly, and like I said, I was disappointed. Now, I'm not one to wallow in denominational politics. There are few things that really deaden the lives of people like dragging ourselves around in the murkiness of denominational politics, because nobody outside of these walls cares. And those same politics tend to produce burnout among those of us inside the denomination. So even so, and normally I stay away from these kind of topics, I will spend a little time this morning. Because with reason and religion, something important is at stake. Now, not all faith traditions appreciate the role of reason in the spiritual journey. I grew up, for example, in a church where reason was considered a problem. And often reason was condemned as sinful. In my childhood church, all matters of faith and spirituality were supposed to be settled based on biblical quotations. You just cite them as proof. And occasionally you would appeal to a book called the Catechism. These things were seen as divine. Reason, however, was seen as human, and therefore sinful. Now, our tradition has a long history of taking a different approach. Now, we're not unique. Classically, Episcopalians and Methodists make some kind of appeal to reason. We aren't unique then, but we are distinct. And one way to lay out the distinction as Universalists is to contemplate very precise language put forth by the great theologian and preacher Hosea Ballou, whose words served as the second reading for this morning. First, we are created as reasonable beings. Our ability to reason, it is not a meaningless accident, nor is the ability to reason some kind of flaw that we're supposed to be ashamed of, even though sometimes we get our reasoning wrong. Our ability to reason is a divine gift that we are expected to exercise if we are going to be fully human. Fully human. Second, if there are truths that God wants us to understand, and I put that word out there knowing that people have all kinds of concepts of a higher power, but those truths would need to be not only reasonable, but possible for the common person to understand. Otherwise, God is simply a cruelty who demands our understanding, but then talks over our heads and condemns us for not understanding what is true, but evidently incomprehensible. So if love is God, then God cannot desire setting the bar so high that most of humankind can't get over the bar. True religion should be reasonable. And humans, to be fully human, need to be able to exercise the spiritual gift of product of the European. Therefore, a manifestation of white supremacy. Advocated for racial segregation in the United States, and people who argued that women were inferior to men, they all presented their arguments as reasonable and sometimes even as scientific. Because I tell you that reason is part of being human, and of being human religiously. And no matter what the critics will say, I can also tell you that people in every culture engage in reasoning. Every culture engages in reasoning. All of humanity doesn't. Now, we may differ on what counts as valid facts. We may differ on the best process for reasoning. We may differ on how to recognize when reasoning has gone bad. We have differed on what actions to take, even when we agree on the facts and the process and the interpretation. But when people ignore reason or devalue it, then we begin to ignore or devalue our own humanity. We ignore reason or devalue it, and then fail to take seriously our need to do our reasoning with responsibility. To engage in reasoning does require that we do it responsibly. Specifically, that we conduct our reasoning in ways that demonstrate responsibility for the worth of all persons, for the worth of all people. So there's a work from Spain, a work of art from Spain in the 1790s. Francisco Goya's The Sleep of Reason produced, and it is a figure. In the artist's notebook, he had a notebook. He writes about how the slumbering figure represents reason. And reason sleeping is humankind, bedeviled by monsters. Spanish folklore of the time used owls. Can you see the owls? And bats as symbols. Owls in Spanish folklore were symbols of folly and abandoned by impossible monsters. United with her, she is the mother of the arts and the source of their wonders. As it is for imagination, this preacher says it is also true for reason in religion. Religion, abandoned by reason, produces all manner of mysterious monsters, and people will savage their fellow human beings in attempts to slay the monsters that are not truly there. Goya's monsters are an illusion produced by the sleep of reason. Religion, united with reason, though, can produce wonders, like a hymn of joy, wonder still the world shall witness. Wonder still the world shall witness, never known in days of old, never dreamed by ancient sages, howsoever free and bold. Sons and daughters shall inherit. And it goes on. Wonders that we shall know. And the dawn of peace and splendor over all the world will be thrown. I want you to understand that despite the pointless denominational politics that can draw people away from authentic progress on the spiritual journey, that your capacity for reason, every single one of you, your capacity for reason is a blessing. And it is a huge part of what makes you human in all the most wonderful ways. It is a spiritual gift, a gift of the Spirit, so that you can know and be known, so that you can understand and grow, so that we can debate and be transformed, so that we can see new directions for our lives, the life of our nation, the life of humankind. Reason done well can even be self-correcting, catching our mistakes and telling us, inspiring us how to put things right when we've reasoned it wrong. And so I hope that this church and churches like it will always be a place where reason and religion meet. Now, just a moment ago, I mentioned that part of our ability to reason involves our ability to engage in dialogue, to debate, and in so doing be transformed. And one of the distinct gifts of this church is not unique to here, but it's one of the things that's really special about being here, is that the message is not just the property of the preacher. We get to share it together as we. What is in your hearts and minds this morning?
52 years ago, when I first started coming to this church, I would have to define myself as an agnostic who was leaning heavily toward atheism. And over the 52 years, I've become a theist. And I think this church really supported that journey, that of my theology to develop itself. And one of the main reasons is because of this place in Romans.
Exactly, right on the nose. That growth that journey wouldn't have been possible if you hadn't had the freedom in this community to ask questions and dig around for answers that work for you.
Right.
What a gift.
Yes, I agree.
What a gift.
That's why I still come here. It's still a place for that. It hasn't changed in 52 years. It's still a place that you can get a hold of the bookstore. I know at one time they sold books and materials to help you do your own theology.
There is a great curriculum. I have a copy of it back at my office called Building Your Own Theology. There's a volume 1 and a volume 2. It's a great way to explore big spiritual topics without recording some things. Yeah, that's kind of bogus, but there's a lot of freedom, though, to work out those big issues. What is the meaning of life? How do we know what makes something good? How do we know what makes something bad? What is my personal freedom for? What should I do with it? Those things are in there. It's a great curriculum. I highly encourage it. Maybe someday I can use it again. Maybe something joint between our two churches, since we're not that far apart in distance. Project for another day.
Do we have any rationale or any understanding of the seeming abandonment of reason in the current times? Not only reason, but compassion. I mean, if you look at Russia, invaded on the words of one man, but the Russian people seem to support it. The Israeli people, most, not all, but most, seem to support what Israel is doing. Even the Palestinians, when you talk to them individually, they support, we've been tortured all these years. That seems to be, we seem to be declining in the sense of reason.
So we have more information at the tip of our fingers. Like, I can just take out my phone and start looking stuff up. We have more information at the tip of our fingers, but we are more misinformed than ever before. I think part of it is that people increasingly live inside their own little information box. And they don't want to see what's on the other side of that cardboard wall. It's an old phenomenon, but it's kind of on steroids right now. And if you're talking about Russia, well, there's a lot of the messaging that is controlled by an authoritarian government. And if they repeat it long enough, lots of people will believe it. Also, really teach kids to engage in critical thinking. I'm not sure. I don't teach in the public school system. I haven't for a long, long time.
I think we see now the conservative trend is away from critical thinking. You can't talk about race. You can't talk about numerous subjects that are banned, and numerous subjects are basically 10 Commandments as they're written.
Well, and yeah, so it ends up, there's a sermon I occasionally give that has to do with explaining to religious congregations science. Because a lot of people think, well, science is just a list of facts. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Science is a method for investigating nature. And so sometimes the things on that list end up getting changed. And so it can be frustrating. I remember when my doctor told me not to eat eggs because he said it was bad for my cholesterol. Well, it was fine. And why? Because we gathered more scientific data and we discovered, oh, yeah, eggs contain a lot of cholesterol, but the cholesterol in your blood, that's the fault of your liver. That's your liver's fault. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be slathering it in cheese and frying it, but, you know, for the most part, you know, my doctor said I can have 6 eggs a week and it probably won't affect my blood cholesterol. I think we live at a time when people are hungry for dogma and a certain amount of easy answers. They want people to give them easy answers. Your life is hard? It's the fault of those people over there. On transgender issues, stating dogmatically, well, there's only male and female. There's never any shades of gray. Despite the fact that there are chromosomal issues that may make someone intersex, there are people we've known for a long time. I mean, despite, when I was a kid, there would be these jokes about, oh, you know, he was a man trapped in a woman's body. We've known for a long time that there are people whose brains are wired one gender, it doesn't match their physical body, and it's distressing. It's incredibly distressing when your brain is wired one gender and your body physically is something else. But people want easy answers. They want to know who to blame. And in a way, life feels less challenging if you live a life of easy answers. If you think you know who Muslims and Jews are. You may have never met one. It's why in my day job at Bethany Seminary, once a year, I take seminary students to Temple Beth Baruch so they can see a Jewish congregation and meet a rabbi and see what goes on in Jewish worship. That way, those stereotypes are broken down and they're not just believing whatever somebody told them goes on inside a synagogue. Yeah, I mean, it's a problem, and it's one we need to fight against and challenge, and we could do so politely and compassionately by saying, you know, there's more to that story than you think. Mike.
You mentioned silos, and you mentioned the convenience of just and staying within that silo.
Most information age now, the knowledge is out there. I think that's just an extension of binary thinking. It's either yes, no, true, false, 0, 1.
Black, white.
Black, white, or male, female. And so when we have complicating factors like you want to believe what I want to believe because we're right and they're wrong, binary thinking again, it leads us to being even more insulated.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point of teaching critical thinking has really never been taught to except few students in certain courses in the history of education. I speak as a 31-year, actually 50-year educator. First of all, it's hard to teach.
It is.
But because education, particularly public education, is so bound up in adopted standards of learning, and then, more importantly, an extension of that is values and what we believe and what they believe, and by the way, we're putting in your school levy, that tends to dampen critical thinking because schools try to please all people all the time. Okay? And in the midst of doing that, they neglect a lot of things. Back to scientific. So I find that very interesting because, well, whatever. But this virus was different. And suddenly it became challenging science because they're always changing their mind. I want to stay in my silo. I don't want my mind changed. You said no mask, okay? Then you said mask. I don't believe in masks. Okay, you said vaccine. You like his paintings? How did you blend that into
So,
this wonderful sermon?
Once upon a time, I've occasionally toyed with writing a long-form book. I've never actually published anything longer than a magazine
Oh,
article.
you need to publish this sermon.
Well, once upon a time, I considered and started working on a book, and I was looking for a title. And I actually ran into this work of art like, goodness, that's the title I need for the book. The sleep of reason produces monsters. Because when we're not reasoning, we imagine all kinds of horrible things that end up not being true. And people will lash out at the things that they imagine about other people that aren't true. But I find that writing long form doesn't work well for me. I'm more of a short form person. But thank you for sharing in this morning's message. A little bit of the worship service left to do.
Part of what it was in the children's story that the art historians and the psychiatrists explained is the monsters that are released are monsters from your past, your individual past. Goya was a depressive. He had maybe manic depressive, but he had a lot of problems with depression in his life. And if you went through all his scope of paintings, a lot of them were dark and scary and depicting things that were really terrible with a gentle hand. And they brought up some of the things that these monsters represent, where perhaps your parents disowned you, your parents abused you, your parents told you you were worthless, your parents told you, or friends at school, or people at school, or people on the street said you were ugly. These type of things, which when you're awake, you handle them, you repress them, you put them away. But when you go to sleep, sometimes these things come out in your dreams and you're not really sure where. But all of us, I think, know and see in my advanced age. I still think of things that kind of pops into my head, things my dad said to me like 60 years ago that I hadn't thought of for years and years and years. Why did he say that? What did that mean? What's going on between my parents? Those things you never grow out of. You never get past that. And now I pass it on to my kids. So, okay. Our offering is up here in the plate. Feel free to put something in if you need to put something in. If you can put something in to share. If you need to take something out, please take something out. If you need help of any kind, please contact us. If we can't help you, we will connect you to the people who can. We are going to hear in honor of the Olympics, I Love Paris. 115, God of grace and God of glory.
The words are by Harry Emerson Fosdick, who for many years was senior minister at Riverside Church in New York City, a flagship of liberal theology. His most famous sermon ever broadcast on the radio was, "Shall the Fundamentalists Win?" His answer was no.
And the answer is not decided yet. Grant us wisdom, ears to hear, and eyes to see. Harry Emerson Fosdick. Our final reading is 509 in the back of your hymnal. Save us, our compassionate Lord, from our folly by your wisdom, from our arrogance by your forgiving love, from our greed by your infinite bounty, and from our insecurity by your healing power. A Muslim prayer. All right, our final slide is another from Goya. Can you, knowing Goya's love of allegory, can you imagine there are two workers underneath? One is a farmer and one is a laborer. And who are the two donkeys they are carrying? Any guesses? One would be religion, and the other would be the aristocracy. This was, of course, done in the 1800s, early 1900s. So that was the labels they put on them. The laboring classes carrying the donkeys. All right, and this is all because I have to have horses somewhere in every one of these presentations. There are donuts, actually not bad either. They were, Kroger has a new thing now, $5 for a dozen on Friday, so these are actually fresh. They're a little worse for the wear because I put them in the back of the truck and then I set a bucket on top of them. So the frosting is kind of mixed and matched, but they're fresh and they're really good because I did sample just to make sure.
They're soft enough to squish.
Yeah, they do squish. Yeah, they're not. So, all right, that ends our service at New Madison. Hope you got something from it. Hope you were able to contribute something to it. As usual, we will leave one candle lit for all those dangers and compassion that is needed in the world. Maybe our little contribution will help. Have a good week and let us know if you need anything.
Postlude.
And postlude, yes. Postlude is Midsummer Waltz. All right. Waltz, yes.
Yes. We'll get there.